is how do we get people to say yes? Now, we I connected these because I felt like the social influence chapter, how do we influence people, goes really well with this idea of how do we then persuade people, right? They're very similar, and I might cut this chapter in future iterations. I don't know. But I think it's interesting because I think if you're thinking about something like HR or advertising, people use more of the stuff found in this chapter and think more about persuasion than they do conformity and compliance, for better or worse. And so we're going to start with these are all people whose research we're talking about. We're going to start with this guy. His name is Cialdini. Cialdini is the guy who ran the norms study for injunctive versus descriptive. And so he's big on persuasion, getting people to behave in the ways that he wants. Now, he originally came out at one point, he's like, there are 6 ways that you can persuade people. And he gave 6. And that was in like the 70s. So then comes the 2000s. He's like, wait, I'm getting old. I don't want to go like Zimbardo. I don't want to do intro psych videos. And so he's like, I have a 7th one. And he comes up with the 7th principle called unity. So his first way, we influence people through authority. What experiment did we learn about last chapter? It was all about authority and obeying authority. Milgram, right? Stanley Milgram, right? So Milgram's study of shocking people is exactly the kind of thing that Cialdini is talking about, right? We are more likely to be persuaded by people who look credible, who seem knowledgeable, who are experts in their field. I think he just said this because he's an expert in his field. But one of Milgram's study, like sub-studies, was wearing a lab coat made people more likely to keep shocking, right? That's just kind of a visual cue of authority. Honestly, when I see like the chem and bio professors walk by in their lab coats, I'm like, cool stuff. And I know like the bio and chem majors get to wear them too. I'm jealous. I really want to wear one. Supposedly they're like covered in like blood and gunk and grossness that you shouldn't actually want to wear it, but still looks like I want to wear it. So we see like authority happen every day, all the time, right? That in my office, there's my diplomas on the wall, right? You go into a doctor's office, they have their diplomas on the wall. They're using that to establish authority, right? Like, I am an expert. I am an authority on the subject. You should be persuaded by me. Other times, we see things like this ad that is advertising cigarettes. That 2,000 or 20,000 physicians says Luckies are less irritating. It's toasted. So they're using the authority of the physician, doctor, to tell you why you should buy this cigarette. So things like 4 out of 5 doctors agree, right? That's your classic kind of like authority-based persuasion. I get you to buy 4 out of 5 doctors agree this is the best brand. Now, I say that with like the asterisks that that phrasing, 4 out of 5, if it's 4 out of 5 friends, right, 4 out of 5 of your classmates, then we might actually be talking more about like consensus building, right? Social proof. This idea that we like to conform. Which of the studies we wrote about last chapter was about conformity? The line study, right? Yes, exactly. The line study. Ash's conformity study where you looked at a set of lines and eventually everyone around you started saying the wrong answer? And would you conform? And so Ash showed that at about 4 people getting the wrong answer, you started to conform quite a bit. So this idea of social proof, having consensus, 4 people have said the wrong answer. I'm going to be the 5th. Am I really going to be different? 4 out of 5 people think it's A. Shouldn't I be the 5th and say it's A too? It might seem obvious, but there's a reason why Stonehill has photos like this on their webpage and not photos of grandma over here graduating. Why? Obviously, this grandmother did not graduate from Stonehill. Different roads, but besides that.
Because like the norm of society is like younger people go to college, whereas like grandma is necessarily like not maybe graduated from college like a while ago, but not at that age.
Okay, so the social norm, like generally in society, is that we have a younger generation that goes to college. But we can be more specific, and not just in society. Where do we see that norm play out? And why is the left one more relatable to you? Because you're younger people yourselves, right? That not only is it a norm generally speaking, but it's also a norm here at Stone, right? We are not different in the fact that most of our campus is 18 to 22-year-olds. And so when people are looking to apply, our high school seniors and juniors look to seeing themselves. Can I see myself? I like who is like me. I like what I'm similar to. And you're going to be a lot more similar to young adults than you are to grandmothers. Only for better. I have no knowledge of what dating apps are like nowadays, but it's my understanding that there's still at least like a profile description of the person while you're looking at their photos, right? And they write some things about themselves. When you can imagine maybe you had a friend write a profile, what kind of things are you putting on that profile?
Your age.
Age, great, right? So we want to know, how old are you? Activities you like to do? You got third one?
Yeah, like what school, what college you go to.
Where you attend, right? Like places that you're most likely to be found at. Great. And why are we telling people about our age, where we're most likely to be, the activities that we do? We're looking for people who are like us. Right? Like, oh, you like coffee? I like coffee too. I wonder what else we have in common. Oh, you like having friends smiling? I like having friends and smiling. Like, let me go to this college, right? And then you make your decision based on that. Uh, I have a hypothesis that's not really testable that I think one of the key factors into where you decide to go to school, at least it was for me, so I then generalized to everyone, was what was the weather like on the day of your visit? Like when I went to Clark, it was gorgeous out, right? The classic college experience. People were on the lawn, they were playing frisbee. There were some people smoking things that I didn't want to know in the corner over there. Actually, it wasn't the corner, it was like right in the middle of the quad. That was kind of Clark's MO. But still, like people were playing frisbee, they were laughing, students are walking around, sun is shining. Little did I know, like Worcester, Massachusetts, then the next year gets the most snow in the United States. Right? But it looked beautiful that day. And I was like, this is the place for me. Was it? I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed my time, but I also applied to Stonehill. And why didn't I choose Stonehill? Maybe the weather wasn't as nice the day I went. we also like to be consistent. And we talked about this one a lot as well in the conformity chapter. In terms of Stonehill asking you for money. Why does Major Gifts, what is one reason why Major Gifts doesn't care how much you give, just that you give? Come to graduate, they're gonna be asking you for money, they're gonna say, it's just $1, like, please just give like $5, $10, whatever you can afford, right? They don't actually care about the number, they just care that you gave. From a compliance, conformity, influence sort of view. Why is it? Or maybe from what we learned about, like if I ask you, can you just give $5? What am I hoping for? Daniel? I'll give more and more each time I ask, right? So this idea of starting with a small donation and then eventually getting to that big, big donation that they actually want. What is that one called? Foot in the door, right? Start small, that gets a big eventually. So foot in the door is the idea of starting small and then getting to big. And throughout like all of three of those, we had foot in the door. I remember the other two ones that were called?
Door in the face and low balling.
Door in the face and low balling, the other two, right? So we had these three ways in which we can get people to do something. So we can ask them for a little and then get a lot, ask them for way too much, then get what we want, or give them an offer, have them say yes, and then increase the price. In all three of those cases, you have done something, at least definitely in lowballing and foot in the door. My example doesn't work as well with door. So Jack, I use foot in the door on you. So first I ask you for $5 and you give me $5 because you're a nice guy.
Yeah.
And then, next week I'm gonna ask you for $10.
Okay.
And are you gonna give me $10?
I'm actually doing the Movember charity. She can donate me $5.
Donate you $5. Wow, way to turn it on me. I like this. Okay. Let me know more about that.
I will.
Okay, that'd be fun.
Okay.
Okay. So I kind of gave a little bit away by my question. I said, Jack, you're a nice guy. And so you gave me $5. When I asked Jack, would you give me $10? What am I hoping goes through Jack's mind? A nice guy would give money, right? That Jack is now identified as a nice guy because he's a nice guy, so he should give money. Right? It's the same thing with donations. You become a donor, right? That's what Stonehill wants. They want you to see yourself as a donor. They want you to forget about the fact that you were a student who just paid them, disgusting amounts of money, and now you are an alum who gives back. That's your new identity that they want. And if they can establish that, then people want to be consistent. And the idea of consistency is trying to get you to identify with that identity and then remind you this is what that identity does. A donor donates. We're calling on our donors to give back to Stonehill. You get that flyer, like, oof, I'm a donor. That's why I got this flyer. They're talking to me, right? This idea that we want to be consistent in ourselves. So here, took a screenshot of an email I got some YouTube channel that I follow, like running event, and people were just giving money. It just blows my mind how much money these people sometimes get. I don't understand the numbers behind it. It's scary, and I stopped thinking about it because then I wonder, what am I doing with it? Anyway, people give money to let other people become part of the club. And you get notified when you were randomly given membership. wow, I'm part of the club now. But it expires after a month. And at the end of the month, they say, hey, member, don't you want to renew? Like, ooh, I did like that identity of being a member. I guess I should redo because that's what a member would do, even though I never entered this agreement in the first place. It was just random. But that's what they want you to do. They want you to maintain that consistency of the identity that you hold. I love ice cream and apple pie, so it's very dangerous. They have the bakery near me. It's like a ice cream place. It's the only place in Rhode Island to get milk. I don't fight anybody on that. So otherwise, Rice Dairy. I will devour ice cream, so I cannot be part of their ice cream member club because I would die in like ice cream, just me with a spoon in the kitchen. We also can convince people the other way. Instead of saying like, oh my God, look at this free membership. Don't you want to continue? But the sale is only going to last today. Buy now. People respond to scarcity. The less of something there is, the more we want it. And this is true for both experiences as well as like material products. There's only 5 seats available to this one-man show. Like, woo! Don't think about how weird a one-man show would be. Like, that sounds fun. I'm trying not to give the examples that we're gonna kind of go through. But in my head, there's a really good example that they'll cover in a little classroom review that we'll do. But anything that's like limited edition, right? And if it's limited edition, why do you want to purchase it for this limited edition? There's a limited number. You're like, is it any different? It's limited edition. I thought I just said that. Like, I don't understand. What do you? Yeah, of course it's different. It's limited edition. What do you get? I just don't think we're communicating well. That kind of thing. His sixth and, until very recently, final path to persuasion is reciprocity. An idea that it doesn't really matter what you do, but help someone out. Now, this comes into that social rewards piece, finally. Cialdini would believe 100% that all altruism is social reward. Because if you help someone or give them something, they are now persuaded to want to give you something back. When you leave restaurant and they have mints at the front, or you go to Chinese, you get some takeout, and they give you the fortune cookie. These are unexpected gifts. You're like, oh, a fortune cookie. I didn't order that. They're not just giving it to you for no reason. What are they hoping will happen? If they give you the fortune cookie, then imagine you went to a place, same experience, but you didn't get a fortune cookie at the end of your dinner.
I remember this. And like little kids already like when I was little, I begged mom, like, I want to go there. This one, that. You get something very useful, it's taking time.
Great.
It's worse for them.
Yes. But it sticks in your mind, right? Like you want to go back, that reciprocity. I want to go back and give to them in the future. You also, in that moment, when you get the fortune cookie, probably have a chance to give to them in the present. Tip higher, right? You want to tip more. What they've shown is that being given the fortune cookie will lead to higher tips than not being given the fortune cookie. Right? Like you immediately reciprocate the gift. It is this basic, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. The last one he talks about now is unity. And unity is kind of thinking about this fact that there are people that we share identities with. And the more we feel like we are a part of this group, the more we are willing to be persuaded by them. Now, this is very similar, and it gets like very fine grained, the difference between this and liking. It's liking / similarity. Like, I like people who are like me. Yes. But here for unity, we're thinking more in terms of that like identity component. I see myself as one of this group. And as a result, I will be influenced by other people in this group. Now, what happens when you're in that group? You probably share similar characteristics and kind of like a feedback loop. You keep liking each other more and being persuaded more and more. But maybe not just something like politics, but something like your family. You will generally go to great lengths to do something for your family, except for share pie. I'm fine. More than you would others. Cialdini like points to, there's this very, 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 very rich man, Warren Buffett. I know Warren Buffett, very rich guy. He runs, or one of the many things he owns is just like stock trading, I guess would be the simplest way to explain what he does. And he went into an investor meeting like during the Great Recession, and everyone was bleeding money. And he comes out and he's like, I'm going to tell you what I would tell any member of my family. And that speech like went wild. Everyone loved it. Because in that moment, everyone in the audience was like, I'm a member of your family. We're united in this together. We'll get through it with our millions and millions of dollars wiping our tears, right? It's like they felt better because he referenced them as a family, right? When you go into work and we're like, we're all a family here. They're trying to convince you to deal with these harsh, terrible, unethical, unlawful circumstances because of unity. And it's definitely not because you like the job, but we're all one family. All right, so those are the 7. Let's identify the 7 the 7 things. So we're gonna put 1 through 7 down. We're gonna do a basic, like you're gonna individually write them down, then we're gonna turn to partners, kind of compare numbers. I'm happy to kind of go back as you're discussing the group, and can you play that one again? And go back and play it again. Some may be easier than others, but we'll see. Sound again?
Conducted in restaurants. So the last time you visit a restaurant, there's a good chance that the waiter or waitress will have given you a gift, probably at about the same time that they bring your bill, a liqueur perhaps, or a fortune cookie, or perhaps a simple mint. So here's the question. Does the giving of a mint have any influence over how much tip you're going to leave them? Most people will say no, but that mint can make a surprising difference. In the study, giving diners a single mint at the end of their meal typically increased tips by around 3%. Interestingly, if the gift is doubled and 2 mints are provided, tips don't double. They quadruple, a 14% increase in tips. But perhaps most interestingly of all is the fact that if the waiter provides 1 mint, starts to walk away from the table, but pauses, turns back, and says, "For you nice people, here's an extra mint," tips go through the roof. A 23% increase, influenced not by what was given, but how it was given.
When British Airways announced in 2003 that they would no longer be operating the twice daily London-New York Concorde flight because it had become uneconomical to run, sales the very next day took off. Notice that nothing had changed about the Concorde itself. It certainly didn't fly any faster, the service didn't suddenly get better, and the airfare didn't drop.
People are more likely to give change for a parking meter to a complete stranger if that requester wears a uniform rather than casual clothes. So, customers interested in letting a property were told, "Lettings? Let me connect you with Sandra, who has over 15 years experience letting properties in this area." Customers who wanted more information about selling properties were told, "Speak to Peter, our head of sales. He has over 20 years experience selling properties. I'll put you through now." The impact of this expert introduction led to a 20% rise in the number of appointments and a 15% increase in the number of signed contracts. Not bad.
Reduced missed appointments at health centers by 18%, simply by asking the patients rather than the staff to write down appointment details on the future appointment card.
In a series of negotiation studies carried out between MBA students at 2 well-known business schools, some groups were told, "Time is money, get straight down to business." In this group, around 55% were able to come to an agreement. A second group, however, were told, "Before you begin negotiating, exchange some personal information with each other. Identify a similarity you share in common, then begin negotiating." In this group, 90% of them were able to come to successful and agreeable outcomes that were typically worth 18% more to both parties.
You may have noticed that hotels often place a small card in bathrooms that attempt to persuade guests to reuse their towels and linen. Most do this by drawing a guest's attention to the benefits that reuse can have on environmental protection. It turns out that this is a pretty effective strategy, leading to around 35% compliance. But could there be an even more effective way? Well, it turns out that about 75% of people who check into a hotel for 4 nights or longer will reuse their towels at some point during their stay. So what would happen if we took a lesson from the principle of consensus and simply included that information on the cards and said that 75% of our guests reuse their towels at some time during their stay? So please do so as well. It turns out that when we do this, towel reuse rises by 26%.
So those were the 7. Close to set up. So turn to your partner next to you, starting to kind of form some groups and just kind of compare. Did you get the same answers? If you had any that were conflicting and you want to have the video like replay that number, happy to play it again. Yeah.
I didn't know they could have really. Yeah. The first three. The next four was up there.
It was like, real had whatever. And
It's like the next thing is I have to save it. And then
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's all.
Then I had, six, I had
Like, I didn't have that, I just kept writing stuff. For number six. Yeah.
Number seven, that would be.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was any.
That's you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was three.
That's the real one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That was two.
Oh. What you get? Scarcity.
No, I wanted to.
Someone, I guess.
Oh, I thought that was six. I could
Oh,
be
it was
wrong.
six, it was six, we can get five.
Or was the whole? Like, we're gonna have to do this versus this one.
All right, so what did we get for the first one? So this was the tip and giving, let me get to like the, right, where if the waiter comes back like, oh, you know what? Actually, for you, and then they give you an extra candy. What kind of social influence to give tips is that?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity, good.
Reciprocity.
And why reciprocity?
Because, they're like giving you like something in return for what you're giving them. So it's like reciprocal. kind of.
Great, right? So they give me an extra gift, and so now I feel obligated to give them back something. And so what am I going to give is a better tip. The tip's been planned all along. So when I come in, I'm like, oh, you know what? You guys are doing great. I'm like, why don't we just cancel class? I had been planning to cancel class from the beginning. Now the jig is up. All right, number two was this idea that British Airways cancels a flight because it's just not making money, and then everyone wants to buy it. Scarcity. Why is it scarcity?
Because they like, it's limited, so people want to get on that flight.
Yeah, you want to ride this flight before it's gone forever, right? This idea of scarcity, that's going to influence us to want to behave differently.
You get better.
Nice. Number three was that you'll give people change as long as they're dressed.
Danger, if that requester wears a uniform,
If the requester wears a uniform, rather than just some random stranger.
Authority.
Why is it authority?
Because of like the uniform they're wearing.
Great, right? The uniform kind of signals that they are in a higher position, they have some power, they're credible, they're trustworthy, so they're willing to give them more money. First couple years of teaching, I was wearing like suits every day, sport coats, but still. And I was like, nah, I don't care. Okay, now this example was that you call in and the realtor office is like, oh, let me connect you to Sandra. She has 20 years of experience in selling property.
Also authority.
Also authority. social psych, I'm gonna mess with you some, so. Two, the same answer. Yes, why is it authority again?
Because they're like experts in their field.
They're experts in their field, right? They have 20 years of experience. That is quite the authority on the subject of how to sell houses. I'm going to trust them, right? And so that's going to lead me to want to work with this agency more. This one was a doctor's office found that as long as you wrote down the appointment on the card and they didn't give you the card, that you were more likely to show up. Why consistency?
Yourself to road plans, so you hold yourself to go back.
Exactly. I wrote this down. That means I know that this time is already been reserved for this appointment. I have to be consistent. I can't miss it. So it's the idea of consistency. Should I been fired by my dentist? Right? I didn't know it could have happened. My dentist kicked me out because I missed one appointment. But I didn't miss it. I canceled within 24 hours. I grant you. But I was like, listen, something life came up because life happens. And they were like, clearly you don't have the same priorities for your teeth health that we have. You're no longer welcome here. Now, hold up the phone because this was my childhood dentist, right? Like this is 30 years of history thrown away for one appointment. And I told them, I was like, I will pay whatever like down payment, like crap that, you're going to charge me. No, we just don't want your business at all. So I left a review saying they left a negative taste in my mouth. I did. Very proud of that comment in my review. But can you believe that? And then I found out from someone else, because I went to a new dentist who, it's a small town, so you know pretty much all the dentists, and they were like, oh, we've heard that story from someone else, but theirs is worse. And I was like, how could it be worse? They had to cancel because their mom had just died and they kicked them out of the practice for missing their dentist appointment. What? Wild. I don't know. I think mom dies. Doesn't matter if I wrote it down myself or not. I'm still gonna miss that dentist appointment. Just, yeah, so. And I went to school with his son. We graduated together. It's just, if I see him at our 15th year reunion, I'm gonna tell him, like, hey, your dad, kind of a dick. So this example was how they had business school students trying to negotiate, and one group was told time is money. The other group was said, before you negotiate, find something you have in common and then negotiate. And they did a much better job of coming to an agreement, and their agreement was actually better for both groups.
Consensus,
Consensus. Why is it consensus?
because like you're agreeing on something, between two people and it's higher. The percentage is higher.
Yes. I can see why that would make sense. One second, I'm just kind of thinking it through. And see, I feel like this is the great part about social psych because I feel like your argument makes sense.
But it's not real, actually, I can strengthen it because it's not persuading, so like.
Is there, okay, well, so that's the thing, right? Like if this was like a short answer kind of question, I'd be like, convince me. But there might be another answer here, not just consensus.
Was it liking and similarity?
Okay, why liking and similarity?
Just because if you both have like something in common, you'd be more likely to be able to either change their mind because you're more similar to them.
And you gotta make your case as well then. What do you mean by like more similar to them?
I don't know, like here says that one guy said they love potato chips and does, and then 9% of them came to an agreement, whereas the other ones was just like time, money, make it work was only 53%. So it was more often that people came to an agreement, meaning that like somehow one person got persuaded or the other.
Okay, great, right? So when we're thinking about maybe, like the first day of classes, when we did the questions that lead to love. Potentially in those questions, you were like, oh, well, I'm really scared of roller coasters. And then I went on one and you're like, oh my God, I'm really scared of roller coasters. Right? And then you have that thing in common and you're more likely to work together the rest of the semester. So, idea that if we find out something we have in common, then I'm more likely to be influenced and persuaded by people who have things in common with me. And so this idea of liking or similarity could apply here, where you have like, I love potato chips, so do I, so let's work out something together. Versus not. Find out someone has different views than you on something, you may be like, ugh, do I have to work with them? Yeah. The last one was our lovely example of the towels. And in particular, their final example or their final piece of evidence was, so you go to a hotel, they want you to reuse your towels. And they've talked about like the benefits for the environment and that kind of works. But if they actually say, you know, the fact is that 75% of people do reuse their towels, then compliance rates really increased a lot. What kind of persuasion tactic is this? Why this one consensus?
Because some facts about other people and what they do, so people are more likely to conform to them.
Yep, and not only just like other people, but how many other people? How many? Yep, no, how many?
Oh, 75%.
A lot of people, yeah, like the majority of people are doing this thing, right? And more than the majority, 75% of people, right? It's this kind of idea of like, there are so many people doing this thing and we want to follow the norm and do what everyone else is doing. The idea of consensus, well, if everyone is doing it, I should do it too. Is this idea of consensus. And if you're listening, Dr. Ward, you know, David Ward. Here. Census. Where are we? Here. It's hoping to get there. Okay. Okay. So that's CLD. CLD says there are 7 ways to influence people and persuade them to do what we want to do. There's a few other ways that we can think about persuasion, not just CLD or nothing. There are other ways. And so one way we can also think about how we're persuaded is we can be persuaded based on the source. Who is trying to persuade me? We can be persuaded based on the target. Who are they trying to persuade? And we can be persuaded based on the content. What are you trying to persuade me to do or to say or to take action on? Or how are you going about trying to persuade me? The who is pretty straightforward. We like people who are good looking. Cover this term back in the first chapter that we learned about relationship. What is this idea that people who are attractive tend to be associated with other good qualities? The halo effect? The halo effect, right? This idea that what is attractive is good. So the halo effect would extend to persuasion. If someone is deemed physically attractive by you, then we are going to view them as more persuasive. just like Cialdini, right, we're also persuaded by authorities, people who say they have credibility and say, I've done a lot of my own research. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, very persuasive. I see. Yes. I have not done my own research, so I'm going to trust this guy, right? Credibility and how certain we are with this. And this tended to become a big issue during COVID, is because we're more persuaded by people who are more certain. You are confident in what you're saying, people are going to believe. That's why they say, like, fake it till you make it. And just like act like you're doing everything correct. Because no one knows you made a mistake on the stage but yourself, right? The audience has no idea what the correct steps are. If you don't show them, they won't know, right? It's that confidence, that certainty. But science is not certain. And so when the CDC was like, well, we're still learning about COVID and we're changing our recommendations based on what we learned, people were getting upset. And they were starting to not become persuaded by them because the scientists were not being certain. And even though that is accurate and the right thing to do, it wasn't what the public wanted, right? They wanted that certain source to tell them, this is what you need to do. Now, attractiveness does mean a lot, but I want to just highlight that there is a difference between physical attraction and social attraction. So social attractiveness would be the likelihood, like, I want to be friends with that person, right? I could see myself grabbing a beer with that person. It's social attraction. Physical attraction is how appealing or pleasant someone's physical features are. So what they did in this study, and again, this isn't, you don't need to ever memorize like the graph or what it looks like. It's just kind of highlights a better understanding of how all this stuff is actually understood nowadays. Is these were looking at influencers in France on TikTok. And so influencers are talking about their products that they have. And the more physically attractive you view the influencer, there's a green line, that means more. So you viewed them as more credible. If they were physically attractive, you viewed them as more credible. The more credible you viewed them, green line, the more likely you were to purchase whatever it is they were selling. That guy I was gifted a channel membership to, he's an attractive looking man. Got a jawline that can just cut. Social attractiveness is the idea of getting a beer, right? Like, I think we can be friends. We talk about this in like developmental psychology about parasocial relationships. That Dora, now it's Puppy Police Patrol, whatever that one is, or Paw Patrol, thank you. And then there's another one too. There's like another new kids show that just teaches goodness. Bluey, yes. Bluey. My brother says Bluey makes me cry right now. It's a good show. Yeah, really, really good stuff in Bluey. So we think that we're friends with Bluey and Dora. They're our friends, but they're not. Right? That we don't actually have a relationship with Dora and Bluey and Leonardo DiCaprio, right? But we think we do. That's the idea of parasocial interaction, parasocial relationships. It's a one-way relationship. Michelle sent me some text between her and this guy, and it's like, hey, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Hey, how's it going? She's like, hi. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened today. And then he's like, keeps like trying to message her. Hi, right? He thinks they have a relationship going on. It is a one-sided relationship. Parasocial. But social attractiveness leads you to believe that you have a relationship with this person. I think we could be friends. We are friends. And the more we think we can have a relationship with them, or we do have a relationship, the more likely we are to purchase from them. There's one red line on this. And so if green means positive, red means negative. What does increasing one lead to a decrease of the other? The more first one you are, the less second one you believe. Not you, the influencer, right?
Influencer.
The less you think you could be, you are friends with them, yeah. So the more physically attractive the influencer is, the less likely you're like, we're friends. You're like, no, we're not friends. I could never be friends with that beautiful person. And so physical attractiveness actually can decrease friendships in the sense that people are less likely to view you as somebody who I could be friends with. So for credibility, we talked about this idea that people who are knowledgeable and trustworthy. And so this in this study, what did they do? Where is this? Oh, yes. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Here what we have is this dotted line is arguments. So we're trying to figure out, would you buy, hilarious based on the time, people who follow pop culture, a new version of Tylenol. Where it just came up. It's from 2006. So they're trying to advertise a new type of Tylenol. This one's called Comfrin. And in the strong, solid line, you get presented really strong reasons for why you should buy Comfrin. Right? That it works 50% faster. It lasts 3 hours longer. It has no harmful side effects. Right? It's really convincing you. Data really shows it. In the weak argument, the dotted line, well, it lasts about as long as the others. Very few harmful side effects. It recently received like 6 out of 10. Like the review is not great. It's not bad, but it's weak. Right? You're not really selling me on this thing. Half of the time you're told the person who wrote this review for you to read is a medical doctor. The other half of the time you're told it's a 10th grader writing a report for school. Low in their credibility on the left, high in their credibility on the right. When we look at these graphs, I'm always looking to kind of see like, what is this ones that are most different from each other? And what do you see as like the most different here in the 4 groups? Which two are most different?
The strong and weak argument with high credibility.
High credibility, the doctor, and like depending on what the doctor says and the arguments the doctor gives, big difference there. If it's the 10th grader, it doesn't really matter what kind of arguments they're presenting, it's a 10th grader. But what is wild is if it's that weak argument, there's really no difference almost. And if anything, the doctor's a little bit lower as far as credibility is concerned, right? Like you need high credibility and giving a strong argument. Like we're putting a lot of asterisks on our authorities to be convinced by them. It can't just be Fauci comes out and says, do this thing. He needs to also convince us on why we need to do it with as strong of an argument as possible. So once he starts showing that uncertainty, like, well, like science isn't sure yet, then according to this, right, the less certain we are, the less likely we are to be influenced by it. Now, we hadn't done one in a while, but there was a pre-class activity that this slide still had the wrong date on it. There was a pre-class activity to watch a clip. I guess I don't have the, I could pull it up. But I really like this clip from The Daily Show. It's getting pretty old at this point. It's been a few years. But Jordan Klemper, he is a correspondent on The Daily Show. And he, for a while, was like the field researcher or field interview guy. So he would go out and kind of interview people on the streets. And he went to a lot of Trump rallies. And he would interview a lot of Trump supporters to try to understand, understand them better. Like, why do you vote for the way you vote? What is happening there? And Jordan had a very different take on credibility than what we have just been spending the last 15 minutes talking about. Especially when it comes to certainty. I think it's really interesting because here's your book saying you need to be as certain as possible in order to be convinced. And then you ask somebody who has been spending years trying to understand and get people to talk to him, trying to convince people, let's have a conversation. And he doesn't necessarily agree with that. You remember what he was talking about? Exactly, right? He says the best way to persuasion is to approach people with uncertainty. Don't be stuck in I know everything to be true, right? And the more certain you are, the less likely you are to be persuasive. And I think that's really interesting. And I don't know necessarily how to think about that, except to think about it that Jordan is talking about persuasion in terms of relationship. And that's not necessarily how your book is thinking about persuasion. When he's thinking about persuasion, he's trying to think about, I need to establish a relationship with the person. He is a stranger on the street coming up to you with a microphone. I would be running away so quickly. So how does he convince me otherwise? How does he convince me to stay? How do the people stay with the Comedy Central cameras on them and be willing to talk to him? And so he's saying that be open to the idea that you don't know everything. Be uncertain. If we can be uncertain, maybe I won't lead you to persuade, but it'll lead you to start a relationship. That there's something here that we can build together, right? You can teach me something and I can teach you something. Reciprocity. It's also important when we're trying to persuade people to have a relationship with us that we show humility, right? I'm wrong there, right? I could be wrong. I'm not sure, right? Be humble. Recognize that it's not just that you don't know everything, but you are willing to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. Right? And then finally, I think what he's talking about is this idea of be vulnerable. It's I think about that a lot, especially this past year. How open do I want to be about my health? And it's well, not all of it, you don't need to know the details, but it would be nice to be a little bit vulnerable. Okay. Kind of break down that wall and let's try to start a relationship here. And then I can persuade you, keep doing your work even though I'm not great again. Right? So back and forth. And so I think here, his point is like, what if we reject authority? And like, what if expertise is not enough? The other side, the other person in the conversation is also an expert, or they think that they are an expert. At that point, they don't really care about your expertise because I'm an expert. But good science is knowing when we are wrong, being vulnerable to that, being willing to be proven wrong, and acknowledge when things do go wrong. No, I don't. I feel like I would rush this in 5 minutes. I don't want to do that. Okay. So we're gonna